The airport terminal buzzed with 1,000 different sounds, a chaotic symphony of rolling suitcases, crackling announcements, and the low hum of impatient travelers. For Leo, holding tightly to his son Milo's small hand, the noise was just a background blur to the loud, anxious thoughts in his own head. This was it. The big move. The fresh start. He adjusted the strap of Milo's dinosaur backpack, feeling the weight of their 2 suitcases, containing everything they owned, dig into his palm. "Look, Daddy. A really, really big one." Milo chirped, his nose pressed against the giant window, watching a jumbo jet glide across the tarmac. His wide, innocent eyes reflected the plane's silver body. Leo's heart squeezed. That look, that pure wonder was the fuel that kept him going. Had to be. Sure as bug. "That's our ride," Leo said, forcing a cheerful tone. The ticket in his pocket felt heavy. A first-class ticket. A ridiculous splurge, but the job interview in the new city was in just a few hours, and he couldn't risk any delays in the cheaper seats. He needed Milo to be comfortable, safe, and hopefully asleep for most of the journey. Leo himself hadn't slept properly in days, the constant buzz of worry keeping him awake. The dark circles under his omega eyes felt like permanent tattoos. Boarding the plane was a quiet affair. Milo, clutching a worn toy airplane, whispered whoosh sounds as they walked down the aisle. When they reached the plush, wide seats of first class, Leo felt a dozen eyes glance their way. He was used to it. A young Omega male, alone with a child, always drew looks. Some were curious, some were pitying. He ignored them, helping Milo buckle into the window seat before sinking into his own with a quiet sigh of relief. That's when he boarded. The air in the cabin seemed to shift, growing cooler, sharper. Kai, the Alpha CEO, moved with a silence that commanded attention. Dressed in a suit that probably cost more than Leo's old car, he had an air of impatience, as if the world was constantly moving too slowly for him. His sharp eyes scanned his ticket and then the cabin, landing on the seat next to Leo. A flicker of something, annoyance? Disdain? Crossed his face. He didn't speak as he sat. He simply opened a sleek laptop, his focus absolute. Leo tried to make himself small, turning to help Milo with his headphones. The flight attendants offered pre-takeoff drinks. Kai accepted a sparkling water without looking up. Leo asked for apple juice for Milo and a glass of plain water for himself. It was during the quiet moment after takeoff, as the plane leveled out and Milo was engrossed in a cartoon, that it happened. Milo wiggled in his seat, his elbow accidentally bumping Kai's armrest. It was the tiniest notch. Kai's head snapped up, his gaze icy. He didn't address Milo. He looked directly at Leo, his voice low but cutting through the gentle hum of the engines. "Perhaps you should keep your child under better control," Kai stated, his words crisp. "This section is for those who require a peaceful environment to work." Leo felt a hot flush of embarrassment crawl up his neck. "I'm sorry, sir. He's just excited. He won't bother you again." Kai's eyes swept over Leo's simple, slightly rumpled sweater and Milo's dinosaur t-shirt. "One wonders why some people insist on bringing their entanglements into first class," he murmured, more to himself than to Leo, but the words landed like stones. "It's hardly the place for a family outing." The unspoken words hung in the air. "Omegas like you. Single parents like you." Leo's throat tightened. He'd heard variations of this his whole life. Too soft, too distracted, too much. He looked down at his hands, calloused from years of odd jobs and long hours. He thought of the secret license buried at the bottom of his bag, a dream he'd let everyone believe was dead. He said nothing. Arguing with an alpha like this man was pointless. He just put a protective arm around Milo, who thankfully hadn't understood the mean words, and stared out the window at the endless blanket of clouds. The clouds were smooth, like a frozen ocean. For a moment, Leo imagined he was up here alone with just the sky and the controls. A place where no one could look down on him. A place where he was in charge. He let out a slow, quiet breath, pushing the hurt down, locking it away in the same box where he kept his old dreams. He just had to get through this flight. Just get to the interview. Just keep going for Milo. He didn't notice Kai glance at him once, a slight frown on the alpha's face, as if puzzled by Leo's silent, resigned reaction. But the look was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the glowing screen of a billion-dollar business deal. The plane sailed on, smooth and steady, high above the world and all its problems. For now. The gentle flight turned scary in a heartbeat. One moment, the plane was sailing smoothly. The next, a violent shudder shook it like a giant had grabbed the wings. Leo's water glass tipped over and Milo let out a frightened squeak. The calm, white clouds outside were gone, replaced by angry, churning gray walls. The pilot's voice came over the speaker, sounding strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've encountered some unexpected severe turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts immediately." This was more than turbulence. The plane dropped suddenly, Leo's stomach lurching into his throat. Overhead bins rattled. A flight attendant stumbled in the aisle. Milo began to cry, his small hands gripping Leo's arm. "Daddy? What's happening?" "Sure, it's okay, Buck. Just a bumpy road in the sky," Leo soothed, his own heart hammering against his ribs. He held Milo close, his eyes scanning the cabin. He saw the way the plane was yawing, felt the uneven strain in the engines. This wasn't just bad weather. Something was wrong. Kai had slammed his laptop shut, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. His cool, composed mask had slipped, revealing a tight line of concern on his face. He wasn't looking at his screen anymore. He was looking towards the cockpit door, listening intently. A loud, metallic bang echoed from the front, followed by a sickening lurch. The lights flickered. A collective gasp rose from the passengers. Then an eerie silence fell, broken only by the whine of the engines and Milo's sniffles. The cockpit door flew open. A flight attendant, her face pale as paper, stumbled out. She whispered frantically to another crew member. Words like incapacitated and unresponsive floated back, sharp and terrifying. The head flight attendant, a man named Carl with a kind face that was now etched with panic, picked up the intercom phone. His hand was shaking. The speaker crackled to life. His voice, usually so confident, trembled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a grave emergency. Our flight crew, our pilots are unable to fly the aircraft." A sob broke out somewhere behind them. Is there anyone on board with any flight experience? Any at all? Is there a pilot on this plane?" Silence. A terrible, crushing silence filled the cabin, heavier than the storm outside. People looked at each other with wide, hopeless eyes. A businessman shook his head. An older woman began to pray aloud. The question hung in the air, a lifeline with no one to grab it. They were a metal bird full of people, hurtling through a storm with no one at the reins. Kai closed his eyes, a muscle twitching in his jaw. He was a man who solved problems, who commanded boardrooms, but this was a problem no amount of money or power could fix from seat 2A. He looked at the crying child, at the terrified passengers, and a profound sense of helplessness washed over him. Leo's mind, however, had gone very still and very clear. The fear for Milo was a fire in his chest, but it burned away the panic, leaving behind a cool, sharp focus. He saw the angle of the plane's nose. He heard the strained pitch of the engines. He'd felt this before in a different life. The toy airplane fell from Milo's limp fingers. Time seemed to slow down. He saw Vance's smug face from years ago, stealing his future. He saw Milo's smiling face this morning. He saw the clouds calling to him. This was not a choice. With a calm he did not feel, Leo gently untangled Milo's hands. "Milo," he said, his voice surprisingly steady, "I need you to be my brave co-pilot, okay? Stay right here with this nice flight attendant. Daddy has to go help." Milo, his eyes swimming with tears, just nodded, trusting his dad completely. Leo unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up in the shaky plane. Every eye in the cabin turned to him. He was just a tired-looking Omega in a rumpled sweater. He didn't look like a hero. He looked like a dad. He took a step into the aisle. Then another. He walked past Kai, who stared at him in utter shock, his earlier cruel words surely echoing in his mind. Leo didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the open cockpit door, on the flashing alarm lights spilling into the dim cabin. The head flight attendant, Carl, rushed towards him. "Sir, do you have experience?" "Yes," Leo said, and the word felt like a key turning in a long-locked door. "I am a licensed commercial pilot." A murmur rippled through the cabin. Disbelief, then a flicker of desperate hope. Without another word, Leo stepped into the cockpit. The scene was dire. One pilot was slumped unconscious in his seat. The other, the co-pilot, was conscious but moaning in pain, holding his shoulder, unable to reach the controls. The storm raged against the windshield. Warning lights flashed like a Christmas tree of doom. Leo didn't hesitate. He gently moved the injured co-pilot aside. "I've got it," he said, his voice a low murmur of reassurance. He slid into the pilot's seat, his hands reaching for the controls. As his fingers wrapped around the yoke, a strange calm settled over him. The noise, the fear, the years of being looked down on, it all fell away. Here, in the heart of the storm, he was finally home. Outside the cockpit door, Kai remained frozen in his seat, watching the Omega he had dismissed minutes earlier take command of their fate. The only sound now was the howl of the wind and the frantic, hopeful beating of 100 hearts. Inside the cockpit, the world was a symphony of chaos. Red and yellow warning lights painted the dark space in frantic bursts. The wind screamed like a living thing trying to claw its way inside. But for Leo, the moment his hands settled on the controls, the chaos began to organize itself into a language he understood. The shuddering yoke spoke of uneven pressure. The screaming engines told a story of strain. The storm was a problem and problems could be solved. "Sir, who are you? What's your qualification?" the injured co-pilot gasped, pain etching his face but his eyes wide with a desperate hope. "Leo Vance. Commercial multi-engine land, instrument rated," Leo replied, his voice clipped and clear as he scanned the instrument panel. His eyes moved with a swift, practiced ease, absorbing airspeed, altitude, heading. The names and numbers were old friends, long neglected but never forgotten. "What's the last heading? What's our fuel status?" The co-pilot, amazed by the quiet authority in the Omega's voice, stammered out the numbers. Leo nodded, his mind already calculating. He keyed the radio, his thumb finding the transmit button by pure muscle memory. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is," he glanced quickly at the plane's call sign, Alpha Charlotte 793. "We have a dual pilot incapacitation. A qualified passenger has assumed controls. We are in severe weather, requesting immediate vectors to the nearest suitable airport and emergency services on standby. Over." A crackling voice, calm but urgent, responded from the air traffic control tower. "Alpha Charlotte 793, roger your mayday. We read you. Identify yourself, pilot." "This is Leo Vance. I am a certified pilot. Current heading is 270 but we are getting battered off course. I need an immediate alternate and a clear path down." Over. Back in the cabin, every passenger was holding their breath. The plane still bucked and shook, but there was a new quality to the movement. It was less like a leaf in the wind and more like a ship battling purposeful waves. The frantic, panicked lurches had steadied into a determined, fighting rhythm. The man's voice, calm, steady and in charge, filtered faintly through the cockpit door. Kai sat utterly still. The words "qualified passenger" and "Leo Vance" echoed in his mind, colliding violently with the memory of his own sneering comment about entanglements. His face, usually so composed, felt hot with a shame so deep it was physical. He had dismissed this man as a nuisance, a distraction. Now, his life and the life of his son rested entirely in those same hands he had judged as incapable. He watched the cockpit door as if he could see through it to the figure inside. Who was he? In the cockpit, Leo was a world away from the ashamed Alpha. He was talking the plane down through sheer force of will. "Tower, I see your vector. Turning to heading 190. The approach is going to be tight." He adjusted the throttles with a gentle, precise touch, feeling the engines respond. He was aware of the injured co-pilot watching him, of the 200 souls behind the door, of Milo's trusting eyes, but he walled all that away. Right now he was not a dad, not an Omega, not a struggling single parent. He was pilot in command. As he worked, a ghost from the past flickered at the edge of his focus. Not the storm outside but a storm from years ago. The memory was sharp and sudden. He was younger, in a different cockpit, wearing a crisp first officer's uniform, his heart soaring with the joy of his new career. Beside him, laughing and clapping him on the shoulder, was Vance. Not just a colleague, his best friend. They trained together, dreamed together. "We're gonna be captains together, Leo," Vance had said, his smile wide. The memory twisted. It was the day before their big evaluation flight. Vance had looked nervous, unsure of a complicated landing procedure. Leo, eager to help his friend, had spent hours walking him through it, drawing diagrams on napkins, sharing all his notes. "Don't worry," Leo had said. "I've got your back." The ghost's smile turned cold. The next day, during the evaluation, Vance had performed flawlessly. Leo, however, had been flustered, off balance. His notes, his personal procedures manual, had gone missing from his bag. He'd made a small, uncharacteristic error. A costly one. The examiner's frown. Vance's shrug of false sympathy. "He's usually better than this, sir. Must be the pressure." The result had been a black mark on Leo's record. Vance got the promotion. Leo got a reputation for being unreliable. The airlines, listening to the concerned reports from his now former friend, quietly let him go. The dream was stolen, not in a fiery crash, but with a quiet, friendly betrayal that left no visible scars, only a shattered future. He'd packed away his wings and taken whatever job he could find to survive, the secret of his skill becoming a buried, painful relic. Alpha Charlotte 793, you are cleared for emergency landing on runway 22 right. Winds are fierce, crosswind component is high. Can you handle it? The tower's question was direct. Leo's jaw tightened. He wasn't that trusting young man anymore. He was a father. He had everything to lose and everything to prove, but not to them. To himself. To Milo. Cleared for runway 22 right, Leo confirmed, his voice solid as stone. I can handle it. The plane broke through the final layer of storm clouds. The runway lights appeared below, a beautiful, welcoming streak of gold in the dark, rain-lashed night. It was a challenging approach, the wind trying to push them sideways. Passengers gripped their armrests, eyes squeezed shut. Leo's hands were a study in gentle firmness. He danced on the rudder pedals, countering the crosswind. He kept the nose aimed true. The plane wobbled, steadied, wobbled again. 50 feet, 30, 10. The main wheels touched down with a squeal of rubber, a firm but perfect kiss of the plane to the earth. He gently lowered the nose wheel. Reverse thrust roared, slowing the speeding metal beast. They were down. They were safe. For a second there was dead silence in the cabin. Then it erupted. A wave of cries, cheers and sobs of pure relief. People hugged strangers. Flight attendants wept openly. In the cockpit, Leo slumped back in the seat, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him trembling. He took a deep, shuddering breath. The injured co-pilot reached over with his good hand and gripped Leo's shoulder. You just saved us all. Leo just nodded, too exhausted to speak. He looked out at the rain-streaked windshield, at the emergency vehicles with flashing lights racing towards them. The secret was out. The ghost was faced. He had flown again. And as the cockpit door was pushed open from the outside, revealing the stunned, tearful faces of the crew and the first glimpse of the cabin full of people he'd just saved, Leo knew one thing for certain. His life, hidden in the clouds for so long, had just crash-landed into a brand new reality. The roaring cheer from the cabin was a living thing, a wave of sound that crashed against the closed cockpit door. But inside the small, instrument-lit space, there was only a deep, echoing quiet. Leo's hands slowly peeled away from the controls. They were steady, amazingly steady, but now that the immediate danger was over, a fine tremor began in his fingers. The reality of what he had just done settled over him like a heavy blanket. He had done it. He had really done it. The injured co-pilot, his face pale but eyes bright with awe, was already on the radio, his voice choked with emotion. Tower, this is Alpha Charlotte 793. We are safely down. Repeat, safely down. Thanks to an angel. Leo barely heard him. His mind was back in the cabin with the one person who mattered. He unbuckled the pilot's harness with clumsy fingers, the movements feeling foreign after so many years. He had to get to Milo. He pushed himself out of the seat just as the cockpit door swung fully open. Carl, the head flight attendant, stood there, tears streaming openly down his face. Behind him, a sea of passengers were on their feet, their expressions a blur of shock, joy, and dawning reverence. They parted for him like a miracle was walking through. And then he saw him. Milo had been brought to the front by a kind-faced attendant. The moment his son saw him, Milo broke free and sprinted the last few steps, crashing into Leo's legs with a force that nearly knocked the last of the air from his lungs. Daddy, you flew the plane. Milo sobbed, burying his face in Leo's sweater. Leo sank to his knees right there in the galley, heedless of the watching crowd, and pulled Milo into a bone-crushing hug. He breathed in the scent of his son's hair, apple juice and the waxy smell of crayons. The fear he had locked away now melted, leaving him weak and trembling. It's okay, Buck. We're okay. We're on the ground, he whispered, his own voice thick. The bubble of their reunion was pierced by the flashing red and blue lights of emergency vehicles now surrounding the plane. Doors were being opened, inflatable slides deploying with loud hisses. The controlled chaos of a post-emergency evacuation began. Passengers, guided by the crew, started to move towards the exits, but many paused as they passed Leo, reaching out to touch his shoulder, murmuring, "Thank you, God bless you, you saved us." Leo just nodded, holding Milo tighter, overwhelmed. He was shepherded down an emergency slide with Milo in his arms, the cold night air a sharp shock. On the tarmac, wrapped in a silver thermal blanket, he watched the surreal scene. News vans were already pulling up beyond the security fence, their camera lights cutting through the rainy gloom. Reporters shouted questions that were swallowed by the distance and the noise of idling engines. And then, out of the organized chaos, a figure emerged. He looked different. The impenetrable, polished CEO was gone. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair slightly disheveled from gripping it during the terror of the descent. He walked towards Leo with a deliberate slowness, as if every step required great effort. The arrogant mask was completely shattered, leaving behind a raw, stark honesty that was almost more intimidating than his previous coldness. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on Leo. He didn't look at the news cameras at the other passengers, only at the tired Omega holding his son. "Leo," Kai said, and his voice was rough, scraped raw by adrenaline and shame. It wasn't the smooth, dismissive tone from the plane. This was something real and fractured. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I don't have the words." Leo looked up at him, his own emotions too jumbled for anger. He just felt exhausted down to his bones. Kai took a half-step closer, his hands clenched at his sides. "What I said to you on the plane. It was contemptible. It was ignorant." He forced the words out, each one seeming to cost him. "I judged you based on nothing. I insulted you. And then, you saved my life. You saved everyone." He gestured helplessly towards the massive airplane, now swarmed with emergency crews. "You are the most capable person I have ever seen." He fell silent for a moment, the weight of his own behavior clearly crushing him. An apology is worthless. It doesn't even begin to cover it. He took a deep breath, his sharp alpha eyes, usually so calculating, now held a desperate sincerity. "But let me try to make it right. Not just with words." Leo shifted Milo on his hip, wary. "What do you mean?" "My name is Kai Thorne. I own Thorne Aviation." He said it not as a boast but as a simple, relevant fact. "One of the largest private airline and aerospace companies in the country. What you did up there, that wasn't just luck. That was instinct, skill, and nerve of the highest caliber. I've hired and fired dozens of pilots. I know what I saw." He met Leo's gaze directly, no longer looking down at him but at him as an equal. "As a superior in this one vital area. I'm offering you a job. A pilot's position with Thorne Aviation. Full salary, benefits, a real career. You have a son to provide for." He glanced at Milo, who was watching him with wide, curious eyes. "Let me give you the stability you deserve. Please." The offer hung in the cold night air. It was everything Leo had ever wanted, laid at his feet by the last person in the world he would have expected it from. A real pilot's job. Security for Milo. A chance to fly again for real. But the memory of Kai's sneering voice, entanglements, was still fresh, a bruise on his heart. The betrayal by Vance had taught him hard lessons about trust, especially from powerful alphas who seemed to offer golden opportunities. Leo looked from Kai's earnest, guilt-stricken face to the news cameras, to the plane that was now a monument to his secret past. He was exposed. His secret was public. He needed a job, and this was more than a job. It was a lifeline back to his dreams. He looked down at Milo, who was starting to shiver in the cold. He needed warmth, a bed, safety. This offer could provide all of that. Leo began, his voice hoarse. "I need the job." He didn't say he accepted the apology. He didn't say he trusted Kai. He stated a simple, desperate fact. For Milo. A flicker of something like pain crossed Kai's face, as if he'd hoped for more but knew he didn't deserve it. He simply nodded, all business again but a quieter, more respectful version of it. "Of course. My assistant will contact you first thing tomorrow with all the details. For now, let my driver take you and your son wherever you need to go. A hotel, an apartment, anywhere." It wasn't a request. It was a quiet command, but one born of a desire to fix things, to provide. Leo was too tired to refuse. He just nodded. As he turned, a blanket wrapped Milo in his arms, heading towards the sleek black car Kai had indicated. He felt the Alpha's eyes on his back. The storm was over. The plane was safe. But as Leo climbed into the warm, quiet car, he had the unsettled feeling that the real turbulence was just beginning. He had traded the silent, hidden struggle of his old life for a new one, bright with possibility and gleaming with danger, all offered by a man whose first impression had been carved in ice. He held Milo close as the car pulled away, watching the flashing lights shrink in the distance, a hero heading into an unknown future. The hotel suite Kai's assistant had secured for them was like something from one of Milo's storybooks. It was all soft, clean carpets, a giant television, and a window that looked out over the glittering nighttime city. Milo, exhausted from the adrenaline crash, had fallen asleep almost the second his head hit the impossibly fluffy pillow in the separate bedroom. Leo, however, sat stiffly on the edge of a plush sofa, staring at his hands. In the quiet luxury, the events of the day replayed in his mind on a dizzying loop. The mean words, the terror, the controls in his hands, the raw shame on Kai's face. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt scraped raw and terribly unsure. Vance's betrayal had been a poison that made him question every outstretched hand, especially one that had first been a fist. A soft knock at the door made him jump. It was a hotel attendant with a warm, gourmet meal and a small bag of toys and children's pajamas for Milo. "Compliments of Mr. Thorne," the attendant said with a polite smile. Leo accepted it numbly. The kindness felt like another layer of debt, another thread in a web he hadn't chosen to enter. The next morning, the promised call came as Leo was trying to coax Milo into eating some of the fancy fruit from the room service tray. A woman's voice, crisp and efficient, introduced herself as Evelyn, Mr. Thorne's executive assistant. She outlined a generous salary, full health benefits that included Milo, a signing bonus, and a start date for the following Monday as a first officer on Thorne's corporate jet fleet. "Mr. Thorne has also asked me to arrange a suitable apartment for you and your son. We have corporate leases in several family-friendly buildings. A car service will be at your disposal until you're settled." It was a fairy godmother's solution to all his problems. So why did his stomach clench? Because nothing was free. Kai Thorne was a businessman. This was either an extravagant apology or an investment. Leo wasn't sure which was harder to accept. Monday arrived too quickly. Dressed in a new simple button-down shirt and slacks he'd bought with the last of his savings, Leo felt like an imposter walking into the soaring glass atrium of Thorne Aviation headquarters. Pilots and executives in sharp suits moved with purpose. The air smelled like coffee, ambition, and jet fuel. He was directed to the executive floors. Sitting in the waiting area outside Kai's office, Leo felt smaller than he had in the airplane seat. Milo was at a wonderful, company-recommended daycare, another compliment of Mr. Thorne. The door opened and Evelyn ushered him in. Kai's office was a temple of modern power, all sleek lines, dark wood, and a breathtaking panoramic view of the city and the airfield beyond. Kai stood by the window watching a Thorne jet take off. He turned as Leo entered. He looked every bit the CEO again, suit impeccable, hair perfect, expression composed. But the icy arrogance from the plane was gone. In its place was a watchful, intense seriousness. "Leo, please sit." Leo sat in the chair opposite the vast desk, holding himself carefully. "I trust Evelyn has taken care of everything?" Kai asked, returning to his seat. "Yes. Very generous. Thank you," Leo said, the words formal and stiff. "It's the bare minimum," Kai corrected him quietly. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "I won't pretend this is a normal hiring. You are here because you performed an act of extraordinary courage and skill under my direct observation. Thorne Aviation values that. I value that." He paused, as if choosing his next words with great care. "I also owe you a personal debt I can never repay. This job is not charity, Leo. It's an acknowledgement of your ability. But I am aware that the circumstances are complicated." Complicated. That was one word for it. Leo met his gaze. "You were right about one thing on the plane, Mr. Thorne. I do have my son to provide for. I need this job. I will do it well. But," he took a steadying breath, the ghost of Vance's smile in his mind, "I need to be clear. I'm here to fly. Not for anything else." A flicker of that same pained understanding from the tarmac crossed Kai's features. He gave a single, slow nod. "Understood. And you have my word, as the head of this company, that you will be treated with the same professional respect as any other pilot. Your performance will be judged solely on your skill in the air." It was a direct, alpha promise. It didn't make Leo feel safe, but it gave him a boundary. A line in the sand. "Your training captain will be Jack Sterling," Kai continued, his tone shifting back to pure business. "He's one of our best. He'll get you checked out on our aircraft and show you the ropes. He's expecting you in Hangar 3 this afternoon." He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Leo stood as well. As he turned to leave, Kai spoke again, his voice lower. "The apartment keys are with Evelyn. I hope it will be a good home for you and Milo." Leo paused at the door, not looking back. "Thank you," he said again, because there was nothing else to say. He walked out, the plush carpet muffling his steps. The meeting had been civil, professional, even kind. But the air between them was still thick with unspoken apologies and unresolved tension. He had the job. He had a future. But standing in the gleaming hallway, Leo felt more alone than he had in his tiny, struggling old apartment. He was now living in a world built by Kai Thorne, and he had no idea what the rules were, or if the man who made them could truly be trusted. The path to Hangar 3 felt like a walk towards yet another unknown. But as he pushed open the heavy door, the familiar, welcoming smells of engine oil, fuel, and clean metal washed over him. And there, leaning against the gleaming nose of a sleek corporate jet, was a man with a shock of sun-bleached hair and a smile as bright and open as the sky. "You must be Leo," the man called out, pushing off the plane and striding forward, hand outstretched. "I'm Jax. Heard you can fly a tin can through a hurricane. Can't wait to see what you do with a proper bird." For the first time since the emergency landing, Leo felt a knot in his chest loosen just a little. Here, surrounded by planes, with a man whose smile held no shadows, he might just be able to breathe. Hangar 3 was a cathedral dedicated to flight. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air around the most beautiful machine Leo had ever seen up close, a sleek Silver Thorn Aviation corporate jet. But for once, the plane wasn't the main thing holding his attention. Jax Sterling strode towards him, his movement easy and confident like a pilot walking on solid ground. His handshake was firm and warm, his grin infectious. Unlike Kai's intense, contained energy, Jax felt like an open sky. "You must be Leo." "I'm Jax. Heard you can fly a tin can through a hurricane. Can't wait to see what you do with a proper bird." Leo managed a small, tentative smile in return, the first real one in days. "Hopefully less hurricane this time," he said. Where's the fun in that?" Jax laughed, a sound that echoed off the hangar walls. "Come on, let me show you around your new office." The next few hours were a blur, but a pleasant one. Jax was a natural teacher, patient and enthusiastic. He walked Leo through the jet's pre-flight checks, explaining the Thorn way of doing things without being bossy. He pointed out features with the pride of a craftsman. "See this? She handles like a dream. Smooth as butter. You're gonna love her." What struck Leo most was Jax's easy, genuine curiosity. "Kai told me the basics, mid-air emergency, dual incapacitation you took over. That's insane, man. But he didn't say where you trained. Your touch on the controls, it's textbook perfect, but with this, I don't know, feel." Leo felt a familiar defensive wall start to rise. The past was a locked box. "I trained a while ago. Took some time off," he said vaguely, running a hand over a wing's smooth surface. Jax didn't push. He just nodded, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Well, rust or no rust, the instinct is clearly still there. It's like riding a bike, only the bike goes 500 miles an hour." Their first flight together was a short hop, a training run to a nearby city. In the cockpit, side by side, Jax was a perfect balance of professional and relaxed. He gave clear instructions, asked for Leo's input, and when Leo executed a particularly smooth landing, Jax let out a genuine whoop. "See? Butter. I told you." It was after they'd landed and were finishing paperwork that Jax leaned back in his chair. "So, Kai mentioned you have a kid. A little boy, right?" Leo stiffened slightly. "Milo. He's 5. Jax's smile softened. "No kidding? My nephew is 5. A total tornado. Best age. What's Milo into?" The question was so normal, so unrelated to pity or obligation, that it disarmed Leo. "Airplanes. Obviously. And dinosaurs. And drawing, he draws a lot of airplanes eating dinosaurs." Jax barked out a laugh. "A visionary. I love it. You know, the company picnic is next month. They have this huge bouncy castle and a mini jet kids can sit in. You should bring him." The invitation was casual, but it felt like a lifeline to a normal life. "Maybe," Leo said, the wall cracking a little more. A few days later, picking Milo up from the new daycare, Leo found a small, wrapped package in his company mailbox. It was addressed to Milo. Inside was a beautifully detailed model of the exact corporate jet Leo was learning to fly, and a note in messy, friendly handwriting, "For co-pilot Milo. From your dad's new flying buddy Jax. Keep him on course." Milo's eyes went as wide as saucers. "Daddy? It's your plane." He clutched the model to his chest, his joy a physical warmth in the cool hallway. That weekend, there was a knock on the door of Leo's new, company-leased apartment. He opened it to find Jax not in his flight suit, but in jeans and a t-shirt, holding a soccer ball. "So, I was in the neighborhood," Jax said, his grin a little sheepish. "And I figured a new place needs a proper housewarming." Which, for a 5-year-old co-pilot, means testing the backyard grass for optimal ball-rolling conditions. Milo appeared behind Leo's leg, peeking out. Jax knelt down, becoming eye level. "Hey Milo. I'm Jax. I work with your dad. I heard you're the boss around here. Wanna show me your backyard?" From that moment, it was like sunshine had physically entered their lives. Jack spent the afternoon running around the small yard with Milo, laughing, teaching him to kick the ball. He didn't treat Leo like a fragile omega or a project. He treated him like a colleague, a friend. He ordered pizza, told silly stories about his early flying mishaps, and listened with genuine interest as Milo explained the complex dietary habits of a T-Rex. Watching them, Leo felt a strange, aching tightness in his chest begin to loosen. The easy laughter, the simple kindness without any complicated strings, was a kind of healing he hadn't known he needed. Jax's protectiveness wasn't possessive or alpha posturing. It was the natural, cheerful protection of a friend who saw someone good and decided to stand beside him. One evening, after Jax had left and Milo was asleep, Leo stood at his apartment window, looking out at the city lights. He had two alphas in his life now. Kai, who was a storm of guilt, power, and a bewildering, stern respect, offering him a gilded cage of a future. And Jax, who was like a steady, warm wind at his back, offering friendship and a hand back into the light. It was confusing. It was overwhelming. But for the first time since Vance's betrayal, Leo didn't feel entirely alone. He had a friend. And as he glanced at the model jet on Milo's shelf, he dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, he could have a family again too. A real one built on respect and laughter, not lies and stolen dreams. The path was still clouded, but for now he had a little sunlight to guide him. The weeks that followed were the most stable and quietly happy Leo could remember. His days had a new rhythm. Mornings with Milo, days in the sky or the simulator with Jax, evenings filled with simple comforts. The apartment started to feel like a home, with Milo's drawings stuck to the refrigerator and the model jet from Jax taking pride of place on the bookshelf. Kai kept his professional word. He was present but distant. He'd sometimes observe training sessions from the hangar office, his expression unreadable. He approved Leo's flight schedule with efficient nods, and once he had Evelyn deliver a set of high-quality, child-safe pilot headphones for Milo. It was a kind gesture, but it felt formal, like business. The awkwardness between them was a wall they both politely walked around. Jax, on the other hand, became a constant. He was the cheerful background noise to their new life. He'd drop by with silly surprises, help Leo assemble confusing furniture, or simply hang out, his presence a gentle, grounding force. He was teaching Milo how to whistle with hilarious, airy results. But the past was a ghost that refused to stay buried. It came in the quiet moments. When Jax praised Leo's perfect landing, Leo's first thought wasn't pride, but a flinch. Vance said I'd never be smooth enough. When Kai handed him a new, crisp flight manual, Leo's fingers trembled. The last manual I trusted ended up in Vance's hands, used against me. The nightmares returned. Not of the storm or the failing plane, but of a sunny day on a quiet airfield, of a friend's smiling face turning cold and smug. Leo would wake in the dark, heart pounding, the echo of a betrayed laugh in his ears. He'd tiptoe into Milo's room, just to watch his son's peaceful breathing, using it as an anchor to the present. One afternoon, they were in the Thorn Aviation Pilot's Lounge after a long training flight. Leo was staring blankly at his coffee, lost in one of those dark, silent memories. Jax, who had been chattering about a new aerobatic maneuver, fell quiet. He watched Leo for a long moment, his usual sunny expression softening with concern. "Hey," Jax said, his voice quieter than usual. "You zoned out a million miles away. And not the good up-in-the-clouds kind of miles." Leo blinked, forcing a smile. "Sorry? Just tired." Jax wasn't buying it. He swiveled his chair to face Leo directly. "You know, for a guy who just pulled off the comeback of the century, you carry a lot of clouds around with you. And I don't think it's just from that emergency landing." Leo looked down at his hands, the same hands that had saved a plane. Why did they feel so powerless against a memory? At that moment, the lounge door opened and Kai walked in. He was there to consult with Jax on an upcoming client flight. He took in the scene, Jax's concerned posture, Leo's slumped shoulders, the heavy silence between them. His sharp eyes missed nothing. "Is everything all right?" Kai asked, his tone neutral but his gaze fixed on Leo's pale face. Jax, never one for subtlety, shrugged. "Trying to figure out what's weighing our star pilot down. Doesn't seem like the usual pre-flight jitters." An uncomfortable tension filled the room. Kai, who had been so careful to maintain professional boundaries, took a step closer. "If there is an issue affecting your performance, I need to be aware of it." It was a CEO's question, but there was a thread of something else there. Something personal. Leo felt trapped. Their attention, one warm and worried, one intense and probing, was too much. The walls he'd built felt like they were crumbling. The ghost of Vance felt more real in that moment than these two living, breathing alphas who were, against all odds, trying to care. The words bubbled up, fueled by sleepless nights and the awful, lonely weight of the secret. He didn't plan to say it. It just spilled out, quiet and raw. "It's an old ghost," Leo whispered, not looking at either of them. He stared at the Thorn Aviation logo on his coffee cup. "A pilot? He was my best friend. We trained together. We were supposed to make captain together." He took a shaky breath. Jax and Kai were utterly still, listening. "The day before our big evaluation he was nervous. I helped him. I gave him all my notes, my tricks, everything I knew." Leo's voice hardened. "The next day my personal manual was gone. I made a mistake. A small one. He was perfect. He told the examiners he was concerned about my focus. Said I cracked under pressure." He finally looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears, not of sadness now but of old, burning anger. "He got the promotion. I got a black mark on my record. No airline would touch me after that. He stole my career. He stole my dream. And he did it with a smile." The silence in the lounge was profound. Jax's face was a storm of anger, his fists clenched. Kai's expression had turned to stone, his jaw so tight a muscle twitched in his cheek. "What was his name?" Kai's voice was low, deadly calm. It was the first time Leo had said it out loud in years. The name tasted like poison. "Vance. His name was Vance." Jax slammed a hand on the table. "That snake. We should find him. Report him. He shouldn't be allowed near a cockpit." But Kai was already moving. He walked to a computer terminal in the lounge, his fingers flying over the keyboard. His search was swift, efficient. A few moments later he turned the monitor. On the screen was a promotional poster for an upcoming, prestigious international air show. The headline read, "Thrills in the Sky," featuring aces like Vance, the Viper, Sloan. There he was. Older, smarmier, wearing a flashy flight suit, grinning for the camera with the same confident, stealing smile. "He's the headline act for the Aero Globe International Air Show next month," Kai said, his voice icy. "He's a crowd favorite. A daring pilot." Leo felt the world tilt. Vance wasn't just out there, he was thriving, famous, beloved. The betrayal hadn't just hurt Leo, it had launched Vance into the spotlight. Jax looked from the screen to Leo's devastated face, then to Kai. "He's going to be here? In our city?" Kai's gaze met Leo's, and for the first time the CEO's eyes held no guilt, only a fierce, protective resolve that mirrored Jax's. "He is," Kai said. "And he will be flying at my airfield." The ghost wasn't in the past anymore. He was on his way. And this time, Leo wasn't a struggling rookie. He had a son to protect, a skill no one could deny, and two very different alphas standing at his side, united by a single burning purpose: to make sure Vance Sloan never hurt Leo again. The month leading up to the Aero Globe Air Show seemed to stretch and warp time itself. For Leo, every day was a battle. The nightmares got worse, twisting into visions of Vance laughing as he snatched Milo's toy plane. During his waking hours, he clung to routine like a lifeline. School runs with Milo, flight sessions with Jax, the comforting monotony of pre-flight checks. Jax never left his side for long, his usual jokes now tinged with a fierce, protective edge. He'd steer conversations away from the air show, focusing instead on Milo's latest drawing or a new maneuver. Kai's approach was different. He was a fortress of quiet, strategic action. Leo noticed new security protocols around the Thorn Aviation hangars. He'd sometimes see Kai in deep, serious conversation with airshow organizers, his expression unreadable. He never mentioned Vance to Leo directly, but his actions screamed a silent, unwavering message: "I am handling this." The day of the airshow dawned bright and cloudless, a perfect day for flying which made Leo feel sick. The Thorn airfield was transformed into a carnival of flight. The smell of popcorn and jet fuel mixed in the air. Crowds buzzed with excitement, pointing at gleaming stunt planes and massive vintage aircraft. Milo, holding tightly to Leo's hand, was a bouncing ball of energy, his fear from the emergency landing completely overshadowed by the thrill. "Look, Daddy. A biplane. And a jet with funny wings." Leo tried to match his son's smile, but his eyes were constantly scanning the crowd, the pilot-ready rooms, the sky. Jax, dressed in his own Thorn flight suit, stuck close. "Just stay with me, okay?" he murmured to Leo. "He's just another pilot today. He doesn't matter." But Vance Sloan did matter. And he made his entrance as if he owned the world. A sleek, custom-painted black and green stunt plane was towed to the main display area. And there he was. Vance emerged from a crowd of admirers, wearing a tailored flight suit with the Viper embroidered on the chest. His smile was a camera-ready flash of white teeth. He was signing autographs, laughing, the picture of a charismatic hero. Then his eyes, scanning the crowd, landed on Leo. For a fraction of a second, the smile froze. Shock, then a flicker of cold recognition, then a calculated, oily smoothness washed over his face. He excused himself from his fans and began walking straight towards them. Leo's blood ran cold. He felt Milo press closer to his leg. Leo? Leo Vance? Is that really you? Vance's voice was loud, dripping with false warmth. He stopped in front of them, his gaze sweeping over Leo's simple thorn-issued uniform, then down to Milo. Wow. Long time. I heard a wild story about a passenger landing a jet. Never dreamed it was my old buddy. He reached out to clap Leo on the shoulder. Leo took a stiff step back, avoiding the touch. Jax shifted subtly, positioning himself slightly in front of Leo and Milo. Vance, Leo said, his voice flat. Undeterred, Vance's smile turned pitying. Look at you. A Thorn pilot? I'm surprised, honestly. After what happened back in the day, I didn't think any reputable outfit would take a chance. He shook his head, the picture of false concern. Kai Thorn must be a real risk-taker. Or, he lowered his voice to a mocking whisper, desperate for good press after your little stunt. The accusation hung in the air. He was rewriting history already, painting Leo as a risky liability just like he had years ago. Before Leo could find his voice, another voice cut through the air, cool and sharp as a blade. The only risk I see, Mr. Sloan, is the one I took in allowing a performer with such a flexible relationship with regulations to fly at my airfield. Kai Thorn emerged from the crowd, every inch the commanding Alpha CEO. He didn't raise his voice, but his presence silenced the immediate area. He stopped beside Leo, not looking at him, his icy gaze fixed entirely on Vance. Leo Vance's qualifications and performance are impeccable, verified by my best training captain. He nodded curtly to Jax, whose arms were crossed, a stormy look on his face. Vance blinked, thrown off balance by the direct, powerful defense. He recovered with a slimy smile. Mr. Thorn. An honor. I just meant, given his past instability. His past, Kai interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument, is none of your concern. Your only concern today is to follow the safety protocols for your display. My head of security will brief you. Again. It was a clear dismissal and a power play. Vance's smile finally faltered. He glanced between Kai's unyielding stare, Jax's protective glare, and Leo's silent, steady hatred. He'd expected to find Leo alone and vulnerable, easy to intimidate. He hadn't counted on a fortress. Of course, Vance said, the charm gone from his voice. Wouldn't want any accidents. He shot Leo one last, venomous look that promised this wasn't over, then turned and strutted back to his plane, his entourage closing around him. The moment he was gone, the strength seemed to drain from Leo's legs. Milo looked up, confused. Daddy, why was that man mean? Jax immediately knelt down. He's just a grumpy old plane buddy. Don't worry about him. Hey, wanna go see the helicopter up close? I know the pilot. As Jax led a distracted Milo away, Leo was left standing with Kai. The noise of the airshow felt distant. He's going to try something, Leo said quietly, watching Vance preen by his black jet. I know, Kai replied, his voice low. His aircraft has been inspected 3 times. My people are watching his every move. He will not sabotage you. And he will not get near your son. The ferocity in Kai's usually controlled tone was startling. This wasn't just about protecting an employee, it was personal. Leo looked at him, truly looked at him. This was the Alpha who had mocked him. Now he was standing as an unwavering shield. Why? Leo breathed out. Why are you doing all this? Kai met his gaze, and for once he didn't hide the storm of emotions behind his eyes. The lingering shame, the anger at Vance, and something else, something fierce and new. Because I was wrong, he said simply, earnestly. And he is wrong. And I will not let his kind of poison win. Not again. The announcement for Vance's stunt flight blared over the loudspeakers. The Viper was up next. As Vance's plane taxied to the runway, Leo felt not fear but a cold certainty. The past was here in the present, a toxic shadow trying to darken his new sun. But he wasn't in the cockpit alone this time. He had a shield and a sword standing with him, and for the first time since the betrayal, Leo felt the stirrings of something powerful. Not just the need to hide but the strength to fight back. The air crackled with excitement as Vance, the Viper Sloan's black and green stunt plane, screamed down the runway and leapt into the sky. The crowd oohed and awed as he immediately went vertical, a plume of colored smoke trailing behind him. He was a showman, pushing the plane through loops, rolls, and dizzying dives, his performance broadcast on giant screens. Leo watched, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Milo was safe with a trusted Thorn employee at the kids' zone, Jax's doing. Jax himself stood beside Leo, a frown etching his usually cheerful face. Kai was nearby, speaking tersely into a radio with his security team, his eyes never leaving the soaring, twisting plane. "He's good," Jax muttered, not sounding happy about it. "Sloppy on the exit of that last roll, though. Too showy, not enough precision." Kai joined them, his voice low. "My inspector said his plane was clean. But they also said his maintenance logs are creative. He cuts corners." A bad feeling, cold and heavy, settled in Leo's stomach. He knew that habit. Vance always cared more about the shine than the engine, about the applause than the checklist. As if to prove the point, Vance began his grand finale, a series of high-speed, low-altitude passes over the runway. On his third screaming pass, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. A small dark piece of the plane's sleek body, a fairing near the tail, ripped loose and fluttered away like a wounded bird. The plane wobbled violently. On the radio channel reserved for show pilots, Vance's voice crackled, stripped of all its earlier bravado, sharp with panic. "Mayday. I got a control surface failure. I'm losing stability." The airshow announcer's voice turned from cheerful to grave. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appear to have an in-flight emergency. Please remain calm." Chaos erupted on the ground. Safety crews scrambled. The crowd watched in horrified silence as the sleek black plane began to yaw and buck, fighting against Vance's increasingly desperate corrections. He was too low, too fast, and losing control. He was headed for a crash, and the crowded airfield was the worst possible landing site. Leo's body moved before his mind could catch up. He wasn't thinking of Vance, the betrayer. He was thinking of the aircraft, of the physics of a failing machine, of the people on the ground. He turned to Jax and Kai, his pilot's mind snapping into that same cold, clear focus from the storm. "He's in a flat spin precursor. If he tries to land like that, he'll cartwheel," Leo said, his voice clipped and urgent. "He needs to be talked down. He needs a calm voice." Jax was already nodding, his eyes alight with the same understanding. "We can get the two-seater trainer up. We can guide him. Get on his wing, talk him through the corrections." Kai didn't hesitate. He looked at Leo, then at Jax, and gave a single sharp nod. "Do it." It was an order, but also an act of profound trust. He was handing the solution to them. They ran. In 2 minutes, they were strapped into the nimble two-seat Thorn aviation trainer jet, Jax in the pilot's seat, Leo and the co-pilots with a direct radio link to Vance. In 3 minutes, they were cleared for an emergency takeoff, the howl of their own engine adding to the cacophony. They shot into the sky, climbing rapidly. Jax flew with a brilliant, aggressive grace, putting them alongside Vance's struggling plane in moments. Through the canopy, Leo could see Vance's terrified face in the other cockpit. Leo keyed the radio, his voice calm and steady, the voice of captain in command. "Vance, this is Leo. You are not alone. Do you read me?" A choked sob of static. "Leo? I can't, the controls are locking up." "Listen to me," Leo commanded, all old hurt burned away by the need of the now. "You have too much speed. You need to reduce throttle now. Gently. Just a little. Now apply opposite rudder. Easy. Easy. Feel it?" Jax kept them in perfect formation, a stable, guiding presence. Leo talked Vance down from the edge of panic and physics, instructing him with a clarity that brooked no argument. "Level your wings. Good. Now a gentle climb. You need altitude to find a clean landing path. Follow us." Together, Leo's calm instructions and Jax's flawless flying created a bubble of order in the chaos. Vance, trembling, followed their lead. They led him away from the crowded airfield, out over a safer, open area used for test flights. "You're doing good, Vance," Leo said, the words strange in his mouth but true. "You're almost there. Gear down. Now focus on my voice. You are going to land." With Leo talking him through every second, and Jax mirroring the correct approach on his wing, Vance's damaged plane touched down on the long test runway. It was bumpy, it was ugly, but it was safe. The plane rolled to a stop. Silence, then roaring applause from the distant crowd, who had watched the entire rescue on the big screens. On the ground, as fire trucks raced towards Vance's plane, Leo and Jax climbed out of their jet. Vance stumbled out of his cockpit, his legs giving way beneath him. He was shaken, pale, his flashy persona utterly shattered. He looked at Leo, who stood tall beside Jax, the two of them a united front. Shame, deeper than any Leo had ever seen, crumpled Vance's face. The cameras were running, broadcasting his every humiliated expression to the world. You saved me," Vance stammered, tears in his eyes. "After what I did, why?" Leo looked at him, not with anger but with a profound, clean pity. "Because that's what a real pilot does," he said, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet. "We don't leave people to crash. Not even the ones who deserve it." He turned his back on Vance, the final chapter on that old wound closed not with revenge, but with a mercy so absolute it was its own kind of justice. The truth of Vance's character, his carelessness, his panic, his reliance on the man he'd betrayed, was now public record. His career as the Viper was over. As they walked away, Jax slung an arm around Leo's shoulders, squeezing tight. "You," he said, his voice thick with pride, "are unbelievable." Waiting at the edge of the tarmac was Kai. He didn't say a word. He just looked at Leo, and in his eyes was a respect so deep it glowed. He gave a slow, approving nod to both of them. The three of them stood together, the rescued, the rescuers, and the man who had given them the wings to do it. The past was finished. The future, for the first time, felt brilliantly, brightly clear. The days after the airshow were quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet, the kind that settles after a long storm has finally passed. The news was full of the story: hero pilots save rival in daring mid-air rescue. Vance, the Viper Sloane's career was effectively over. An investigation into his shoddy maintenance practices was launched, and his shiny reputation was tarnished forever. Leo didn't feel happy about it. He just felt free. The ghost that had haunted him for years had been faced, not with a shout, but with a calm, steady act of grace, and it had simply dissolved in the sunlight. At Thorn Aviation things were different too. The other pilots, who had once been politely distant, now greeted Leo with genuine warmth and respect. He wasn't just the Omega who got lucky anymore. He was the pilot who had flawlessly handled 2 emergencies and then saved the man who wronged him. He had earned his wings in their eyes, not just on paper. Kai had changed the most. The stern, unapproachable CEO was gone. He didn't hover, but he was present. He started joining Leo and Jax for post-flight briefings, listening intently. One afternoon he appeared at Leo's apartment door, looking uncharacteristically awkward. He held a large, flat box. "For Milo," Kai said, his voice gruff. "I heard him say he wanted to build a model of the rescue plane." Inside was the most intricate, detailed model aircraft kit Leo had ever seen, along with a set of proper child-safe tools. It wasn't a flashy, expensive toy. It was a project, something to build together. It was perfect. "Thank you," Leo said, and this time the words weren't stiff. They were warm. "He'll love it." Kai met his eyes, and a small, hesitant smile touched his lips, a rare and beautiful sight. "I would like to help him with it. If that's acceptable." It was more than acceptable. It was a bridge. That weekend, the 4 of them, Leo, Milo, Jax, and Kai, were sprawled on the living room floor of the apartment, surrounded by tiny model parts. Jax was telling an exaggerated story about his first solo flight, making Milo giggle as he tried to fit 2 pieces together. Kai, with surprising patience, was showing Milo how to read the assembly instructions, his large, capable hands gently guiding the small ones. Leo sat back watching the scene. His heart felt so full it might burst. The 2 alphas in his life were so different. Jax was the sunshine, constant, warm, and life-giving. He was the one who made Milo laugh, who pulled Leo out of his dark thoughts, who filled their home with noise and joy. Kai was the shelter, strong, steady, and protective. He was the one who created safety, who provided stability, whose quiet, deep respect made Leo feel valued in a way he never had before. They weren't competing. They were complementing. Jax's light showed the strength in Kai's shadows. Kai's strength gave a foundation to Jax's light. And together they built a world where Leo and Milo could truly thrive. Later, after Milo was tucked in bed, with the half-built model plane proudly on his nightstand, the 3 adults sat on the balcony under a blanket of stars. The city lights twinkled below, quieter than the cockpit lights they were used to. Jax broke the comfortable silence, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "You know, I used to think my life was pretty great. Fast planes, no ties. But this." He gestured back towards the apartment, towards Milo's room. "This is better. This is what I was flying towards and didn't even know it." Kai stared into his glass of water. I built an empire because I thought that was how you measured a life. Profit, power, control. He looked at Leo, his gaze intense and honest. You showed me I was measuring the wrong things. Courage isn't control. Strength isn't coldness. Family. He paused, the word clearly new and precious on his tongue. Family is the only real fortune. Leo listened, tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. He looked at these two amazing, powerful men who had stumbled into his life through fear and guilt, and had chosen to stay for love and respect. He took a deep breath. After Vance, I thought I was broken. That I had to hide the pieces and just get by for Milo's sake. I never dreamed I could be whole again, let alone. He looked from Jax's smiling face to Kai's earnest one. Let alone have my heart feel so full it could hold more than just one person. You both saw me, the real me, the pilot, the dad, the hurt person, and you didn't run. You stayed. You built a home with me. Jax reached over and took Leo's hand, his grip warm and sure. Kai, after a moment's hesitation, placed his hand over theirs, his touch firm and grounding. I can't imagine my future without you both in it, Leo whispered, the truth of it shining in his eyes. Without both of you. And Milo, he needs you. He needs Jax's laughter and Kai's quiet strength. I need you. Kai was the first to lean in, his movements slow, giving Leo every chance to pull away. He didn't. Their first kiss was soft, a promise of safety and deep, abiding respect. When they parted, Jax was there, his smile brighter than the stars. His kiss was different, full of sunshine and joy and the thrilling promise of adventure. It wasn't an ending. It was a beautiful, uncharted beginning. A unique family forged in storms and healed in sunlight, built on a foundation of betrayal overcome, courage discovered, and a love that was big enough, brave enough, and strong enough for all of them. The next morning the four of them had pancakes. Milo sat between Jax and Kai, demanding one tell a silly story and the other explain how maple syrup was made. Leo watched, his heart soaring higher than any jet ever could. He was no longer just a single Omega dad surviving. He was Leo Vance, a cherished partner, a beloved father, a respected pilot. He was home, surrounded by his family, finally ready for the peaceful, joyful flight ahead.